Welcome back everyone, we Weeb online and today I'm gonna continue the story What if Naruto and female Kurama were stuck on an island part 2. If you enjoy this video, please give it a big thumbs up and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Was something strange going on between them? Maybe a little. Since they became friends, he felt like she was becoming more and more needy. It seemed like this big change happened that night, just a few weeks ago, when she dragged him out of the shelter at the crack of dawn to watch the sun rise with her. Maybe it was because he almost got his legs blown off when he walked into that explosive trap. But she didn't seem to let him go anywhere alone anymore. She was with him from dawn until dusk, whether he was in the jungle looking for more food or on the beach. He did not mind. In the end, it just meant that he could talk to her a lot more. At first, the only time she didn't go with him was when he took a shower. She would now also stay with him during those times. She used to turn her back on him when he was taking a bath, but now she feels comfortable enough with him to talk to him face to face when he is bathing. It had been weird for him for a while. After spending so many weeks with her, he got used to having her around. So much so that when he was in the river naked around her, it didn't bother him as much as it used to. Since the water helped hide his bits, he didn't have to worry about exposing himself when he talked to her, such as the talk he was having with her at the moment. He said, "Shukaku didn't seem like that at all when I fought him." And she laughed softly. "Oh, yes. Before he went completely crazy, he loved flowers a lot. Too bad he spent most of his time in the desert," she said with a smirk on her face. "Even though he was partially sealed, I'm still surprised you were able to beat him. It shows how weak he was." He told her what he thought as he washed his hair. "Yeah, well, he was crazy hard to deal with. I had no idea that all tailed beasts were like that. I always thought that most of them just wanted to kill everyone. They're only like that because you monkeys wanted to kill them first." "Well, seal them first," she said, mindlessly twisting strands of her short, orange hair with her fingers. "Most people are nice when they are alone with someone they can stand, but not with each other. We all hate each other for some reason. I don't know why." She shrugged her shoulders and turned her head away from him so she could look at him out of the corner of her eye. "It's been a long time since we've all been together. I don't remember why we broke up. I just know we did. We hate each other for no reason." He asked, "How long ago did this all happen again?" She started, but then stopped and started counting on her fingers instead. "Maybe 10,000 years ago, or something like that," he said. He made his eyes bigger. "Oh my, that's... How old are you? I can't keep track. How do you forget how old you are?" he asked as he swam closer to the rock she was sitting on near the basin. "You kind of just stopped caring after a few thousand years," she said, shrugging her shoulders and looking down at him again. She licked her lips and looked up at his handsome face before looking down at him again. "You monkeys care a lot because you have things to celebrate every year." Was it just her, or did he seem to have changed in some way? She sometimes couldn't take her eyes off of him. She felt this nice warmth in her heart and sometimes in other parts of her body when she looked at him. She should have been worried, but the feeling was so nice that she gave in almost as soon as she felt it. She only noticed it when they slept together in his shelter for the first time that night. It was that nurturing and primal heat that would start to flow in and out of her whole body if she didn't stop it. Even though she should have been more worried, it didn't hurt to give herself a little treat, right? "Well, if you have a birthday, I can celebrate it with you," he said with a smile, as if he didn't notice how she was looking at him. She gave a sad smile. "I did, but I haven't thought about it in a long time. We can always just pick a date. The day doesn't matter as much as the meaning," Naruto replied, leaning back in the water and submerging himself up to his shoulders with a happy sigh. She asked him softly, "Would you do that for me?" as she tilted her head to the side and looked into his eyes. He gave her a look and a nod. "Yes, I'd. Maybe once we figure out what day it is, we can pick a day for my birthday," she said, the sadness in her smile disappearing and being replaced by a toothy grin. Watching that sudden change in his expression filled him with confidence. "When you smile, you look really pretty, do you know that?" Her cheeks flushed, her ears bent downwards, and her eyes widened in surprise at his sudden compliment. "How did that get there?" "I just had to say it," he said with a smile. "You and your impulses," she said softly, squeezing her lips together as she felt her cheeks getting hot from her own blush. "Now you've made me blush again." "Is that what you like to do, Naruto? Make legendary tailed beasts blush?" He let out a chuckle. "Only if you do it." When he spoke, his words made her blush even more. "You're really putting it on now." He pointed a casual finger at her and said, "Only because I know you like the praise." "That's true," she said, putting both hands up to her face to cover her cheeks. "But, him," she gave her head a slight shake. "I like the compliments, but it's embarrassing to blush." Naruto raised an eyebrow and asked, "Why?" "Well, it's not right for a beast with tails to be so easily swayed emotionally by a human," she said, rubbing her cheeks to see if she could make them less red. "But does it matter here? We're alone on an island," he said. She pursed her lips and thought for a moment about what he had said. His words were true. He was not going to judge her, nor would he ever cause her such strong emotions with ill intent. In fact, the fact that it took her so long to figure that out made her feel even worse about herself. Since she had her hands over her cheeks, he wouldn't be able to see her blush turn an even deeper shade of red. Not until she was ready anyways. You're right, it doesn't matter. It's just you and me on this island, she said softly, nodding her head, and then lowering her hands to show him that her cheeks were still red. There, he gave her a smile. If it makes you feel better, there are times when you make me blush too. Not as much as I do, she said with a pout. Maybe you could do more. She wrinkled her brow and perked up her ears. Oh, that's a problem. Just putting it out there, he said with a nervous smile when he saw her smirk. I think you just gave me a challenge, Naruto. I rarely back down from a challenge, you know. As she spoke, her tone changed from the dull one she usually used to a much sexier one, which made him shiver. It won't be hard to make you blush. Even after she said what she did, his tan cheeks stayed the same color as if by magic. Alright, then. I see you have already put up your defenses, she said with a deep, feminine laugh as she slid off the smooth rock she was sitting on and moved closer to the water. It doesn't matter, I have all day ... and if I have to, all night. He quietly took a bite. Because she was standing over him and he was sitting down, he couldn't see her face when he tried to look up at her. Instead, he saw the underside of her large, full, and very well-shaped breasts. They were quite a sight to see. They were held back by a tight, dark blue top that seemed to be almost skin-tight where it mattered most. Then she bent over and put her hands on her hips, which made her breasts bounce against each other right in front of his face. As the blood rushed from his head to his growing erection, Naruto started to salivate. He lowered himself a little bit more into the water and pursed his lips to hide the fact that he was really hurting down there. Even the cold river water couldn't bring him down when a beautiful woman walked up to him. Hey, he said in a shaky voice, making her hum in a curious way. She said in a soft, fake whiny voice, Come on, Naruto, blush for me. I want to get back at you. I even made a pose and everything. He moved away from her slowly. It's not like I can make myself blush whenever I want to. Oh, so this will make you blush? She asked innocently before putting her hands on both of her breasts and squeezing them together. Don't you male monkeys like it when women play obscenely with their own breasts? As he watched her touch herself, Naruto bit his bottom lip. She was also doing it quite roughly, digging her fingers into the soft, doughy flesh of her breasts as she kneaded and squeezed them together. For a split second, he thought he saw the faint outline of her pert nipples as they hardened under her thin, midriff-exposing top. He finally decided that enough was enough and stopped. With a shaky breath out of his nose, he forced himself to turn his cheek to her and look away. Then he got red in the face. Gotcha, she said, pointing both fingers at him and puffing out her chest with pride. Why yeah, you got me, he said, sinking himself into the deepest part of the river until everything below his nose was underwater. She let out a happy sigh and then sat back down on her rock. I like that. He looked at her quietly and said, I don't think I'll ever be able to look at you the same way again. Oh, everything you did, Naruto said, his cheeks again reddening as he looked from her face to her breasts, and back to her face. It was too hot. What? I was just teasing you. It's not like you can't have. You? She asked, her eyes widening slightly as she realized what she had said. As he nodded his head, his blush slowly crept up to his ears. Yeah. She kept looking at him with her lips pursed. She wouldn't tell him, but a part of her was proud of the fact that she could get him excited by just touching herself. Even though this form was weak and not nearly as grand as her fox form, she thought it had its advantages. Perks like being small enough that she wouldn't hurt Naruto if she laid her head on his stomach, or being able to feel that strange, but oddly pleasant, feeling of him being taller than her. Now that she thought about it, she liked being this way after all. It was nice that she could stand next to him almost as if he were her equal. He gave her confidence that she had never had before in this class, even more so now that she knew how much she had changed him. Do you need some time alone? She asked, not knowing what to say. She swallowed quietly and slowly looked down from his face to where his groin would be under the water. In all honesty, she was starting to wonder what he was keeping from her. She had wondered about things before, but now that the subject had changed so much, she couldn't stop thinking about it. Just thinking about it gave her this warm, hazy feeling that filled her head with a naughty fog. She was so confused by all of these feelings, some of which were forming in her heart and others in places like the spot under her belly button and her special place between her legs. What was going on with her? He slowly shook his head. I think, if you give me a few minutes, it'll go down. After that, we can go back to the beach. She mumbled, as sure, and put her hands in her lap. I'm sorry, Naruto. I might have gone too far. No, it's not your fault, he said with a hand gesture. It was just a joke, and I'm a guy, so stuff like that happens. Does it? Does it hurt? Do you really want to know? She took a quiet moment to swallow and then answered his question. I'm curious. Kind of, he said in a soft voice. Do you need help? She asked softly, her face turning red. The eyes of Naruto got bigger. I think I can handle myself, he said after taking a moment to slowly exhale to calm himself down. You don't have to help. You can go back to the beach first if you want. She made a sad face and shook her head. No, I don't want to leave you. Oh, okay, Naruto said, biting down again on his bottom lip. Before he spoke again, there was a moment of silence. You know, I never would have thought you could do that. I didn't think I'd be able to do that either. It just happened. As she said this, her 2 ears slowly started to hang down. He slowly made his way back to her. Still, that was really impressive. If we make it back, maybe you could try being an actor to blend in. I'm trying to blend in. She looked at him and pursed her lips when she saw the toothy grin on his face. If we ever get back, I'll probably just go back to roaming the wilds, but I'll make sure to come see you. I need to know how my favorite monkey in the world is doing. That would be great, he said, his happiness at being called her favorite clear in the way he spoke. You might find that people pay more attention to you in that form than when you're a fox. How so? Well, when you're in that form, you're beautiful, cute, and adorable, and you also have a really sexy side I didn't know about, he said. She gave a small gasp and turned red at his words. You would be very interesting to a lot of guys and even some girls. Oh, yeah. He raised one eyebrow. What's the matter? Naruto, the only monkey I want to pay attention to me is you, she said, her blush getting stronger. I feel sick to my stomach just thinking about someone else looking at me the way you do. That makes me very happy to hear, he told her with a soft smile. It'd be better. You should be proud that I think so highly of you compared to the other monkeys. His smile got bigger. Yes, I am. Just being able to spend time with you is an honor. She gave him a smile back and then looked down at the water. She pursed her lips and thought for a moment about what they had said so far. It had become normal for them to pause like this when they talked. They were normal and didn't make them feel weird at all. The fact that they could be quiet and not feel awkward showed how well they knew each other. She was thinking about things when she heard him start to walk toward where she was sitting. He reached out to her and asked, Hey, could you throw me my jacket? I think I've had enough showers. Not at all, she said. Then she picked up the orange jacket, which she used to hate but now found kind of cute, and gave it to him. Thanks. As he got out of the water, he wrapped himself in a towel and took a few steps back behind her to dry off. After he finished quickly, he went to where she was sitting and picked up his clothes. Just as he was about to tie his wet jacket around his waist, she pulled on the back of his shirt, making him turn his head to look at her. She kept her head down to avoid meeting his eyes. What's up, Naruto? Yes? He asked with a slight tilt of his head. I don't want to go back, she said. He raised one eyebrow. Oh, I don't want to go back. Here, I feel safe. Here, I get to be with you, someone I can trust. She gave him a look. Do you want to turn around? When Naruto looked into her eyes, he pursed his lips. Those red eyes that could show so many different feelings. They could be fiery when angry or dull when sad. He could see right away that they were weak in some way. He took a moment to think about it after being asked. When was the last time he thought about his friends back home or his own home? He thought that the most important reason for her to stay on this island was that it was safe. But why did he choose to stay? She was happy. She didn't see a tailed beast in front of her, just a girl who was in an unfair situation. He would admit that he was young and impulsive, but he also knew that if he was making the wrong choice here, he wouldn't have felt as sure when he finally parted his lips to tell her his answer. Even if he had wanted to leave, he would have stayed after just one look at her. This island was now his home, where he spent every day and night with her. No, I don't want to leave you. After he said that, she gave him a hug right away. He gave her another hug. Even though they didn't talk to each other again, something had changed. He did. She did. There was no going back. Things between the two of them were getting better and better. At the crack of dawn every day, the two of them would climb to the top of one of the jungle's tallest trees to watch the sun rise. They would sit right next to each other on one of the thicker branches, with her head on his shoulder, and watch the orange and red colors as the sun rose from behind the water on the horizon. After that, they could turn around and talk while enjoying the view of the endless greenery behind them. The island went on as far as the eye could see, and then some. It was full of tall trees with beautiful flowers growing out of them, and there was a huge mountain range in the middle. Seeing these two amazing views right after each other was a great way to start the day. Even though the island was very big, he hadn't explored much of it. Even though there was a lot to find or learn, he was happy to just spend time with her at the beach, the place with the apple and longan trees, and the part of the river where they would bathe. All of that was only a tiny part of the huge island they were on. But it was pretty much his whole world to him. Of course, she too. She was her friend and, in the end, the only other person on the island with him. But the word friend started to feel wrong for someone like her. He didn't think it was right to call someone so close to him just a friend. This was especially true after he told her he would stay with her even if they found a way off the island. There was definitely something unique about them, something that could change your life. He just didn't trust himself enough to say what it was. Not yet, at least. Even if things didn't get worse, he would have been happy to just be with her. So many parts of their relationship were things he had never really done with anyone else. There were times when they teased each other and times when they talked about more serious things. There were also times like this when they were quiet. As they looked out toward the jungle, they could feel the warmth of the sun on their backs. The sun had just risen and taken its place in the sky. But today was a little different. Even though she had her head on his shoulder, she was also brave enough to wrap herself around his arm. When he put his head on top of hers, he rewarded her for being brave. Neither of them had said anything either. It didn't bother them, though. Even when they didn't have anything to say to each other, they could still smile and enjoy being together. Every day that went by, they got more and more used to each other. Even though the touches they shared said a lot about how close they were getting, they never talked about it and always found a way to change the subject. At some point, that silence would have to end. It was just a matter of time. Naruto gave a soft sigh and decided that he would be the first to speak. I don't think I'll ever get sick of seeing this when I wake up. She turned her head to look up at him and said, "The view is nice." He agreed, and then he looked down at her and grinned. "But I'd say the view next to me is even more beautiful." Just as he wanted, her cheeks got red. "You and your silver tongue. If you had been this smooth before we got stuck on this island, you could have had a girlfriend back in your village." He thought about what she said for a moment and then tried to remember the girls he knew when he lived in Konoha. He found it strange that he didn't care enough to try to imagine what it would have been like to date any of them. He only thought about the girl right next to him. Maybe being alone had something to do with it. Maybe. He shook his head. "I can't go back in time to see if you're right," he said. "True." When she stopped talking, he raised an eyebrow. Speaking of time, Naruto, I'm curious about how long we've been on this island," she said quietly. "About a month," Naruto said, shrugging. "Why do you ask?" "It doesn't feel at all like a month has gone by," she said, letting out a soft breath as the corners of her lips curled up into a soft smile. "Does it?" "No, not at all," he told her with a smile. "What was that saying again?" "That time goes by quickly when you're having fun." Naruto nodded. "Yes, that's the one," he said. She gave a soft laugh and then gave him a smirk. "Every day is fun with you, Naruto," she said, squeezing his arm before turning back to look at the jungle. After a few seconds, he did the same. "I can say for sure that every time I wake up and hear you snoring next to me, it makes me smile." When he heard her say that, he smiled. When he woke up in the morning, he knew what a slob he was, so when she told him that she liked that about him, it meant a lot to him. He thought he had to tell her something to show that he felt the same way. He stopped as he thought for a moment about what to say. "I used to hate waking up, you know. I hated it the first few times you dragged me up here, but now, well, I look forward to mornings now. I look forward to sitting here with you and watching the sun rise." She said, "It seems like we've both had the same effect on each other. I used to hate getting up, too. When I told you I wanted to watch the sun rise with you, it was just something I said on the spot." He made a soft, happy sound. "There are good things about being impulsive." That's true. They didn't say anything else because they didn't have anything else to say. This time, she was the one who broke it. "Over the past few days, I've been thinking more." "Oh," he said, looking back at her with a raised eyebrow. She also looked back at him and gave him a nod. "Yeah. Are you up for sharing?" She gave another nod. "I do." He smiled and said, "Then go ahead." She smiled back. "Okay," she said to herself quietly. Then she took a deep breath and spoke. "So, in the past month, I've told you more about myself than I've ever told anyone else. You've seen parts of me that no one else has, and instead of judging me, you accepted me and made me feel good about parts of myself that I used to look down on. Sorry if this seems too serious for a morning chat." He gave her a reassuring smile and told her, "No, it's not. If you think it's important to say it, it's important for me to hear it. You're so nice." She stopped talking as a slight blush crept up her cheeks. "Naruto, I feel so lucky to have you all to myself." He teased her by saying, "Well, I'm the only other person on this island." She laughed at his joke. "Yeah, well." She again started to lose her train of thought, so she quietly cleared her throat and then spoke. "Anyway, I just wanted to say that you've helped me deal with things I didn't think needed to be dealt with. You've helped me see myself in a whole new way," she said. Her words made her smile, and he smiled back. "I used to hate this form because I thought it was weak, frail, and ugly. After hearing all the good things you said about it, I now think it's beautiful, cute, and adorable, and I want to thank you for that." Even though what she said was true, she didn't mention that the main reason she liked this form so much now was because he liked it. "That makes me very happy to hear," he said, reaching up to gently scratch behind one of her ears. She gave a quiet purr, then laughed. "I bet you are, because it's not often that the strongest-tailed beast says something so heartfelt." You just made my whole day by telling me that, Naruto said to her with a happy smile. Yes, well, I hope what I'm about to say will make your whole week, she said slowly, squeezing her lips together for a second before saying his name. Naruto. He quietly took a breath. Yes, after everything you've done for me. Well, to be honest, I don't even know why I waited this long to tell you. Maybe I just wanted to wait for the right time, she said, making him raise an eyebrow. But I think you are on the same level as me, and I have been thinking that for a while. You may not be as strong or as old as me, but you are powerful in your own way, and you have shown me that. Slowly, his eyes got bigger as he got what she meant. So, you're going to tell me your name, right? Yes, she said with a sweet smile. You've earned it. She had to take a second to get over how intensely he was looking at her before she could tell him. It's Kiwimiko. That's my name, Naruto. Since she was the nine-tailed fox, he thought it was fitting that her name included the number 9. Since she was from a long time ago, it made sense that her name was long. But he didn't have anything to complain about. He was overjoyed that she had finally put enough trust in him to tell him her name. Kiwimiko. He whispered her name as if she were a god or goddess. When she heard him say her name, her blush got worse. I'm so glad I can hear you say my name, Naruto. I knew it would feel good to hear you say it. After hearing her name, he wanted to take things a step further while she was still in a good mood. He turned his head to the side and asked, "Can I call you Kiwumi?" She looked away. "Wait, what?" "Kiwumi," repeated Naruto. "I think it's a cute way to shorten your name, don't you? It hasn't even been a minute, and you already want to cut it down." She asked in a shocked voice, "Is Kiwimiko that long?" Naruto gave a head shake. "No, it's not because your name is too long. I just think, well, since we're so close, wouldn't it be fine to call you by a nickname?" Well, Kiwimiko pursed her lips and thought for a moment. "Well, I guess we're close enough that I can deal with you shortening my name. But I hope you don't think I'll call you Naru, because I think that's a silly name." "Yes," he said with a nod. "Then, okay, I guess Kiwumi isn't that bad. You did say it was cute." Her voice trailed off, and she buried her face in his arm as her cheeks turned red. "Damn it, Naruto. Only you can make me feel this way. If anyone else had done what you just did, I would have ripped them in half. Even God could come down and call me that, and I would still try to kill him. Does that mean I'm special, Kiwumi?" he asked, gently nudging her with his elbow to get her to look back up at him. Kiwimiko took a quiet swallow. "I guess it does." "How unique." "Special enough," she said, squeezing her lips together. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I think there's something I should say, too," Naruto said as he slowly turned to face her with a serious tone. When she saw how angry he looked, she got red in the face. "Well, like you said, if you have something to say, Naruto, I have something to listen to. I hope I'm not making you feel bad or anything," he said, softening his gaze a little. "Not at all. Even now, you make me feel more at ease than anyone else I've met," she said as she put her hand on his lap. "So if you have something to say, Naruto, please say it. Sorry if it all comes out wrong." Kiwumi smiled at him to make him feel better. "I'm sure I'll be able to figure out what you mean no matter what you say," he said, "all right," and then took a deep breath. "We've been friends for a while, but in the last few days, I feel like we've become more." She pursed her lips and asked, "What do you mean?" "Well, him. Remember the first time we met, when my teacher kicked me off that cliff to try to get me to call a giant toad?" She nodded and then gave a small laugh. "I do. Heh, I still remember what you were like. You were such a runt, the perfect example of a monkey brat. I was a lot louder back then, and I'm pretty sure the first thing I asked you was if you were willing to give me some of your power," he said, smiling fondly at the memory. She smiled back. "You had such a funny face when I told you no," she said with a sigh of satisfaction. "Teasing you was always fun, and it was the only thing that kept me entertained in that cursed seal. I bet it was. When I was younger, I might not have liked it, but when I think back on it now, I find it funny." Kiwumi laughed and snorted. "When you were younger, you would have ripped off his head." Naruto smiled and said, "Thank goodness it all worked out in the end." He let out a nervous laugh when she said that his head had been ripped off, which made her laugh softly at his exaggerated reaction. "Yes, it did," she said with a snort. "I'm still not sure how that happened. I think that's part of what I'm trying to say, Kiwumi," he began, making her raise an eyebrow. "We may have hated each other back then, but being on this island with only each other has brought us much closer together. The first thing you said to me when we got to this island was that I was a stupid monkey. Now, we sit here every morning with your head on my shoulder and watch the sun rise. I don't know how it happened, but you're the closest person I have now. You are, too, Naruto. I don't think I've ever cared about anyone more," she said, her cheeks turning red. "You're so kind, so humble, and so sweet. I couldn't ask for a better person to spend time with on this island. Part of me wishes that everyone could see how you really are. Then they would see that they were wrong all along," he said, pausing for a moment before shaking his head. "But I'm selfish, Kiwumi. I'd be jealous if anyone else knew. I want to keep this side of you all to myself." I don't know. I want you all to myself. She tried to speak, but all she could come up with was his name. Naruto. Naruto put both of his hands on Kyuumi's shoulders and said, I don't think there are words to describe how I feel about you. The more time I spend with you, the closer you get, but I still feel like you're far away. She said his name again, Naruto, and blushed when she felt his strong hands on her thin shoulders. Then she slowly leaned forward and put both hands on his cheeks, which made him blush too. I think there are words to describe how you feel. How we both feel. He made his eyes bigger. Kyuumi. Now he was the one who couldn't say anything. I hadn't expected things to go this fast. I was just going to tell you my name and open up to you a little bit more today, she said, rubbing her thumbs along his whiskers. I thought it would take a lot longer for this to happen. I would have been more ready, but... She stopped talking and looked down, hesitating a little as her will failed. He only had to give each of her shoulders a soft, reassuring squeeze to make her feel better. She looked back into his eyes and smiled when she felt sure of herself again. I guess you can't get ready for things like this, Naruto, especially when it's you. He quietly took a bite. Kyuumi, if you want to wait, you don't have to. No, Naruto, I need you to know right now. As she talked less, she leaned toward him more and more until there was only an inch between their lips. As she moved closer to him, he slid his hands past his shoulders and wrapped his arms around her upper back as she lifted herself onto his lap. Now that they were so close, they could each feel the other's warm breath on them and smell each other. He thought she smelled sweet like honey with a hint of smoke. She was happy to find that he smelled like the woods when they were close. Even though they didn't say anything for a few moments, they both knew how the other felt because they were looking lovingly into each other's eyes. Even so, she still said it. I love you, Naruto. As did he. I love you too, Kyuumi. She looked down at his lips as she licked her own, then back up into his eyes. You're going to kiss me now, right? Naruto gave her a toothy smile and a snort of amusement before putting one hand on the back of her head and pressing their lips together. Before they finally kissed, they both closed their eyes. The way she held his cheeks made him want to kiss her even more. Neither of them had ever really kissed someone before, but where they were lacking in skill, passion, and love quickly filled the gap. Even though their kiss wasn't perfect, this moment was. As things got more heated, he felt more confident and started to run his fingers through her hair and move his other hand down to her lower back. When he touched one of her ears, she made a soft moaning sound against his lips, which made them both blush. The fact that she made such a cute noise seemed to encourage both of them, so they put even more of themselves into the kiss until it got hot and heavy. They kept showing how much they loved each other through this kiss until they were both out of breath. When they finally broke apart, a small trail of saliva connected both of their lips, which made them both blush even more. The first person to get better was Naruto. Kyuumi, as she looked into his eyes, she let out a quiet sigh. I had no idea that a kiss could be like that. Yeah, he said between breaths. I'm glad it was you, Naruto, who made me fall in love with him, she said with a warm smile. Naruto gave her a smile in return. I love you too, Kyuumi. Ugh, I wish you had used my full name when you said that. He made a soft, happy sound. I love you, Kyuumiko. She turned red. I love you too, Naruto, she said. Things were getting worse. Only a little. From just one kiss, a whole myriad of different loving acts between them had opened up to them. Even though neither of them were really ready for all of that, they were both tempted to just jump right in. It looked like they were both determined to go as far as they could with the things they were doing to each other now. All it would take for one of them to do something is for the other to touch them lightly or look at them in a subtle way. The only thing that stopped them from going all the way was that they were both hopelessly romantic and needed to spend some time together at each stage before moving on to the next. Not that anything was wrong with that. It was kind of like not being able to have sex until you got married or something. When they were both ready, they would take that step forward together. But right now, and Naruto. As they played together in the river, her cute-sounding squeal made him want to splash her even more. Both of them were naked and showing the other their whole bodies, which neither of them cared about. His clothes were all over the place on the smooth rock where Kyuumiko used to sit, but she had just disappeared. They had already been in the river for 30 minutes. Even though they were just there to take a bath, things got more interesting when she splashed him playfully. He splashed her back because he thought it would be a good way to have some fun with her. Now, they were having a small water fight between themselves. Take that. He shouted and splashed her again, but this time he got her right in the face. She squeaked and then splashed back without looking. Oh, now you're getting it. Am I? He dodged and smiled. Kyuumiko squealed again as Naruto splashed her again. You're too good at this, Naruto. Her compliments made him feel proud. He was wrong to be so sure of himself, though, because it gave her a chance to take advantage of him. What? He yelled as water from the jet she shot at him got into his eye. Gotcha. Once Kyuumiko had the upper hand, she didn't give up. She splashed him over and over, making sure not to use all of her strength so that she didn't hit him so hard that he fell over. Still, because she didn't want to kill him completely in this splash battle, he was able to slowly make his way over to her even though she flooded him with cold river water several times. Naruto said, "I'm going to get you." He then tried to grab her, but his voice was distorted from all the water hitting him, which made her laugh. She started to move away from him and splashed him as well. "It's possible. It'd be easier if you didn't keep splashing me. Face the challenge, Naruto. Don't run away," says the one running away. "Only because you're trying to catch me. When I catch you," he was interrupted when she sent a splash right to his face. "What are you going to do?" So focused on teasing him, she was completely unaware as the subtle sounds of moving water came from behind her. It was only when it was too late that she realized what was happening. Feeling a set of powerful arms snake underneath hers, she felt the hands of her captor clasped behind her head, effectively locking her upper body in place. In such a position with her arms forced outward, her large, bountiful and fat breasts were on full display to him. Droplets of water rolled down from them, reflecting some of the sunlight as it trailed down her body, past her navel, before joining back with the river. "Shadow clone, baby. That's what I'm gonna do," exclaimed Naruto, grinning victoriously at her as water dripped from his drenched blonde hair and face. "See, cheater," she huffed quietly before she tried to squirm her way free. Now of course she could just effortlessly break free, but where was the fun in that? Kumiko loved these times when she could act as weak as her current form made her look. She would never tell him, but putting herself in these situations where she could act submissive turned her on quite a bit. She put on a fake fight and waited anxiously to see what he would do to her now that she was helpless. "Can you really call it cheating if you know I can use shadow clones?" he asked as he slowly moved toward her and gave her a smile. "You're a ninja, so you should be happy to be called a cheater," Kumiko told him with her tongue out. He made a soft hum. I hadn't thought of it that way before." "Well, duh. You're not much of a thinker, Naruto," she said with a smirk on the corner of her mouth. "Well, at least you have me to make up for that." "Yeah," he said, never taking his smile off for a second. "Thank goodness for you, Kyumi." She bit her bottom lip, and his honest answer made her cheeks just a little red. She was expecting a response, but it was nice to hear that from him. Hearing him say that had actually made her very happy. So much so that for a moment, she forgot about her lewd plans to get him to play with her. When she did remember, though, she didn't wait to bring it up again by bringing up the fact that she was still in a rather provocative position. "So, Naruto, now that you have me like this, what are you going to do to me?" she asked innocently, her blush getting deeper as his eyes briefly went to her breasts, and then back to her face. "I honestly thought you were just going to kill the clone," he said, taking a few steps toward her. Naruto pursed his lips and kept humming. He then cupped both of her breasts, which made her let out a soft squeak and bend her ears down. "Your breasts are really big and heavy," I said. Is it a bad thing?" She blew out a hot breath and her cheeks started to turn red. He gave a head shake. "No, not at all." His voice trailed off, and he looked over at his shadow clone before calling it back to him. "If you want me to stop, Kyumi." "No, please keep going, Naruto," she said softly, pressing her breasts together with her forearms and clasping her hands on top of them now that her arms weren't being held back. "We're a couple now, so this kind of touch is normal." He slowly nodded and then put his hands on both of her breasts. He thought that they were just as soft as they had always been, so soft that his fingers could easily sink into them with just a little bit of pressure. He moved his hands so that her nipples were pressing against his palms and gave her another squeeze. This time, he squeezed her much harder. Even though she didn't make a sound and only took a quick breath, he could feel her nips getting harder under his hands. When he looked up at her, he could see that she already had a slight haze in her eyes and that her cheeks were starting to flush again. Naruto whispered, "Your breasts are perfect," and then moved his hands so that his thumbs were pressing on her nipples. Really? Are they?" Naruto gave her a friendly smile. "They are so soft that it feels great to squeeze them. My fingers sink right into them, and they fit perfectly in my hands. But that shouldn't come as a surprise, Kyumi, since everything about you is perfect. I don't know what feels better, your praise or your hands." She trailed off, blushing more as she was overcome with embarrassment. "Why compare? Just enjoy both," he told her as he rubbed the soft pads of his thumbs against her nipples. This made her moan. Kumiko stutteringly said, "You're right," then let out another soft moan as she slowly sank into the water, pulling him down with her. Knees knocking. She gave a slow nod of the head. Yes, even though her breasts were now under the water, he still squeezed and needed them. She realized that the way the warmth from his hands mixed with the coolness of the water was really turning her on. So much so that she had to put her hands on his shoulders for support as she tried not to get any louder. "You can be as loud as you want, Kyumi," he told her. This made her blush because she thought he might be able to read her mind. "It's just you and me." He had a point. After she was able to nod her head, she closed her eyes and leaned toward him. She opened her mouth and let herself go so she could moan freely. Even though he had only played with her breasts a few times so far, he was already very good at it. He knew most of the places she liked to be squeezed, and he had this great way of doing it on her nipples that made her go crazy. I never thought something so simple could feel so good. Her voice trailed off, and her bottom lip began to quiver as she let out another moan. Naruto moved his body slowly toward her. I think there must be a way to improve this, she said softly. Please, then go ahead, even though she already knew what he was going to do to her. She parted her lips just ever so slightly just before he kissed her. The way her warm breath felt on his lips made him want to try something they'd never done before, use their tongues when they kissed each other. Already excited by his hands, she almost immediately gave in when she felt his warm tongue on hers. It was a very naughty kiss. As he kissed and groped her, his tongue and lips muffled her cries for help. Even though all he did was kiss her and touch her breasts, she was getting so close. So desperately close that where he touched her, she felt like a fire was spreading through her whole body. It was annoying, but she loved this feeling, that strong rush of pleasure right before her inevitable peak. Her inevitable, coming point of no return. Naruto. As she pulled away from the kiss, Kyumiko called out his name. When she finally got there, she tightened her grip on his shoulders, pressed her thighs together, and turned red. He held her up when her legs gave out, helping her stay steady as the waves of pleasure from her intense orgasm came and went. She bit down on her full bottom lip and pressed against him, pressing her sensitive, swollen breasts against his chest and wrapping her arms around his neck. When she was shaking and quivering from her climax, she needed to feel his strong body against hers and feel his warmth. As he held her, he used one of his hands to stroke her back. This made her make a few soft purrs and moans. Naruto spoke up when her breathing went back to normal. So, Kyumi, how did that go? Even better than the last time, she said as she cuddled up to him and hummed a soft, pleasant tune. He smiled and said, "Oh, good." She gave him a smile in return, then leaned forward and put her chin on his shoulder. She was quiet for a while before she spoke. "I can feel you poking my thigh." "Yeah, well." He gave a shrug. "It takes place." Kyumiko blushed. "Naruto, it's so hot and hard. I'm sure that the water will eventually cool it down," he said, pursing his lips. "Why? Why can't I cool it down this time, Naruto?" she asked as she slowly moved back to look at his face. Yes, even though they had already been through a lot together, she hadn't had a chance to show him how much she loved him. She had wanted to make him wiggle and moan ever since the first time he touched her and gave her her first ever orgasm. She knew he wanted it too because whenever she gave him something in return, she could feel him throb against her. Why didn't he just let her go? She had already seen his member. He wasn't even little or anything. He was not small at all, so there was no reason for him to feel bad about it. "Kyumi," she said, "that's not fair, Naruto. I want to touch you too." He put one hand on her cheek and asked, "Are you sure you want to?" He didn't want her to feel like she owed him anything. Kyumiko nodded her head, and as she did so, her cheeks turned a deep shade of red. "I want you to be happy too, Naruto. Please." When he saw the want and desire in her eyes, his cheeks turned red. "All right, Kyumi," finally, she said with a smile, then gave both of his shoulders a gentle squeeze to make him feel better. "I was wondering when you were going to give me a chance. I just needed one last push," he said, but he didn't say it right away. Kyumiko leaned in and gave him a soft kiss on the cheek. "I know how scary it can be to be in a relationship, Naruto. Just being with you makes me nervous, so I can't imagine how you feel. As long as you accept me, Naruto, I will accept you." Naruto said softly, "I just feel like I might be doing something wrong if I start asking you for things like this, Kyumi. I don't want to eventually freak you out or anything," and he pursed his lips. "You won't?" he asked. "How do you know?" with worry in his voice. As she pressed their foreheads together and looked into his eyes, her smile grew. "Because I love you, Naruto." "I love you too, Kyumi." She put her hand on his hand that was on her cheek. "Naruto, take me back to land." He held her close to him and smiled at her. As he waded back onto land, she pressed her soft, doughy breasts against his strong chest. As they got closer, he could see that her excitement was making her eyes redder and brighter than they usually were. When he got there, she pushed him down, which was easy for her because she was so strong. "You've been wanting this a lot," she said. "I have," with a sultry trill as her eyes slowly moved down his body and landed on his groin. It wasn't enough to just see it. She wanted to be right next to him. She slowly slid down until her face was right next to his chest. She did this by putting her hands on his chest. Naruto was so long and scary that he could probably lay it across her face lengthwise, and he was so thick that her delicate fingers would just barely be able to wrap around him. He gave off heat and a smell that she found so incredibly sexy that she could get going again with just a sniff, especially when she put her face close to his sack. Even after a few minutes in the water, he was still as hard as a rock, which made her very happy. "What a hunk. You're looking at it so intently," he said as she looked up at him and bit her bottom lip. She opened her mouth to say something, but stopped when he moved. It's so full of life." "It's glad to see you," Naruto joked, and she let out a soft giggle. "And I'm glad to see it," Kyumiko said with a smile as she put her fingers around the base of the tree. After that, he kept quiet and kept biting his bottom lip as he watched her make him feel good. Kyumiko started by stroking him with her hands, which were so soft that she quickly used both of them. She ran her hands up and down his body, sometimes changing directions to see what he liked best. She quickly learned from his groan that he liked it best when she had one hand on his base and the other on the rest of him. "Kyumi, that feels great." As she continued to stroke him, the edges of her lips turned up into a soft smile. "I can tell." As she talked, lots of gunk started to come out of his swollen tip. The sleazy substance covered her hands, making them sticky and slick, and made every touch she gave him sound wet and erotic. He was really hurting now, and when her fingers touched one of his more sensitive spots, he would sometimes buck his hips or groan. "Kyumi, tell me, Naruto, where do you want to come?" she asked, squeezing the hand she had wrapped around the base of his cock. He tried to answer, but all he could do was grunt and push his hips into her hands. "I guess it's up to me," she said with a smile. She stood up just a little bit and put her breasts in front of him by sliding one arm under them. She began to stroke him faster as she licked her lips in anticipation. She moved her hand up his whole length and around his head before sliding it back down. She watched as his face contorted with pleasure and his muscles started to flex and tighten, which told her that he was getting closer. "KQ, just watch, Naruto. Just watch as you come on my breasts, these breasts that you love so much." He quietly swallowed and turned his head up to look at her. The sweet feeling of her hand moving up and down his length and her sweet, sultry whispers finally pushed him over the edge. As he shook his hips one last time, he felt her hold on him get tighter. This was his climax. His cock hurt as thick ropes of his hot, potent seed came out of it. Most of the seed went where she wanted it to go, on her breasts. She also got some of it on her neck and hand. For a few seconds, neither of them moved as they tried to get back on their feet. She was so amazed by how it looked, smelled, and felt warm against her skin that she actually shivered. She had thought he would come a lot, but not this much. He had thrown his head back against the ground and was working hard to get his breathing back to normal. They didn't say anything as they enjoyed the good feeling of what they had just done. When Kyumiko finally spoke up, the silence was broken. "Naruto, that was really hot," she said as her cheeks turned red and she looked down at her breasts, which were full of cum. "It was," he said, catching his breath. "You came so far." She stopped, bringing the hand she had used to kill him to her lips. "I wonder," he quietly breathed out. "Kyumi." Naruto watched as she stuck out her tongue and tentatively licked her hand, taking some of his cum into her mouth. When she tried it, she turned red right away because it was strangely delicious. It was dirty, wild, and just a little bit sweet, and she wanted more. She licked her hand clean and then wiped it off her breasts, humming happily as she cleaned herself up. "I'm becoming such a naughty girl for you, Naruto," she said with a blush as she looked up at him after licking herself clean. "You better take responsibility." He slowly sat up and let out a quiet groan. He reached out and began patting her on the head, which made her give a soft, happy purr. "I'll be sure to." Naruto smiled at her. She pouted all of a sudden. "Naruto, I wish you had been louder." He gently lifted a brow. "Oh?" Kyumiko started by folding her arms under her breasts and saying, "When you touch me, I make so many sexual noises. That's embarrassing. I wanted to get back at you." "Maybe you will, eventually," he said as he kept running his fingers through her hair. "Next time," she said with a sure voice. When he got down on one knee, he put his arms around her and pulled her close to him. "I'll be excited about that," she said, and put her hands on his shoulders at the same time. "I bet you will, and I bet you can't wait until you can play with my breasts again." He made a soft, happy sound. "I do too, Naruto. I'm really looking forward to it," Kyumiko told him, blushing at what she had just said. She then moved closer to him and put her hands behind his neck. "When you touch them, it feels great." "It felt great when you, she asked, "when I made you come on my breasts." His embarrassment made her feel braver. Naruto gave a slow nod of the head. "Yeah." After he stopped talking, they were both quiet for a few seconds while they enjoyed their loving embrace. But at some point, Kyumiko decided to say something. "You're still tough. Do you want me to do it again?" He turned red. I'd like that." She smirked. "Sometimes you are very cute, Naruto." "You are always cute, Kyumi." Kyumiko hummed quietly. Only because I have someone to be cute for." He took a few deep breaths and then spoke. "I love you." "Heh, I love you too." There was a short pause. "So, what's next?" He didn't say anything right away. "Yes, could you?"
I will continue the story in next part, so stay tuned. Till then, we weave offline.